Alright, what's up everybody? Phil Brown, Big Easy Quest. We're going to talk a little bit today about drifting. You can do a regular drift at the side of the boat only if the wind is right. When I say wind is right, when there's just a steady breeze going across the lake and there's no chop, that's when you can drift out the side of the boat. Of course, that presentation will spread out your baits a lot wider, and you'll be able to locate more, different fish having that wider spread. The other way I like to do it is dragging baits. When I drag baits, well, either way, when you run a side drift at the side of the boat or the dragging baits, here is your key ingredient right here, is your drift sock. Pick these up at any Bass Pro, Cabela's. I know they're owned by the same spot. I am not sponsored by them, so don't get that wrong. Don't get your panties all in the wad. So drift socks are key. Depends on how big the boat you got, depends on how much wind there is, whether or not it's going to work or not. So if you got a bigger boat, sometimes a bigger drift sock. I have a 120-inch drift sock, I have two 70-inch drift socks, and this one's I believe it's a 36. So when there is no wind, so there's no wind at all, like today, it's just a light variable wind, but it picks up, drops off, picks up, drop off. That's hard to judge as far as, not having to use the power behind it as far as your trolling motor. This technique I like to use the most because of the fact that I can control the speeds myself. Today we will be dragging baits, and we will use a 3-inch drift sock out the back. So the 36-inch drift sock out the back, and that's just mainly to keep the boat in line, because if you don't have something dragging in the back, sometimes your boat will kind of dance. So I'll put the trolling motor on north. I'll set the speed at like 0.6, that way it could bounce to 0.4 to 0.8 or 0.9. 0.4 to 0.9 is about the speed you want to go for catfish. Throw the drift sock out the back, throw your baits out, start dragging baits. Hit your mud flats, hit your your drops off and your ledges and stuff like that. A lot of times I live on Red Rock Lake or close to it, to where I've drugged this whole lake from one end to the other, and the reason being is just to find fish. That was back when I first started. Now if you're on a drift and you're catching nothing but 4-pounders, pull your trolling motor out, go find some bigger fish, because of the fact that a lot of these fish they'll congregate in their own little groups, kind of like we do. We're not going to go hang out with a bunch of 6-year-olds. I'm 40 years old. If anything, I'm going to hang out with somebody that's 30 to probably 50, maybe older, I don't know. But I mean, as far as going and hanging out, these fish congregate in their certain groups. You'll have your different classes of groups of fish, because of the fact that the bigger these fish get, they will attack their offspring, because of the fact that they're hungry. They get bigger, they like to eat more, and they prefer bigger baits. So hit your ledges. There's times, like I said, there's times where I've drifted this whole lake. It was a 6-hour drift. Caught a lot of fish in that time, but I located exactly where those bigger fish were hanging out, because I would catch 20 fish that were 4 pounds, and then an hour later I would come across a couple ledges, and then I'd stick a couple 8 to 10 pounders, and then I get on top of that mud flat and I catch a couple 4 to 6 pounders, and then I get on the other side of the ledge, bam, a couple 8 to 10 pounders. So that told me that them bigger fish like those ledges, so I would concentrate more on those ledges. There has also been times where we fished tournaments and drug baits to where it took longer to set up for that drift than it did to actually fish the drift, because it was only about a 5-minute drift, but these fish were keyed on this one spot. There was a ledge and there was a little dip in the ledge. Well, that little dip for some reason they like the baits going across, not with it, because we try going with the ledge, not even a single bite. We go across the ledge, up it and down it, bam, 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 they'd smoke the bait. So that told us, you know, we're gonna make probably a 10-minute drift. It's gonna take probably 12 minutes to bring in the drift sock, set the trolling motor, and get everything set up and rebait for that drift. But every time we did that 10-minute drift, we picked up 3 fish. You know, they were over 7 pounds. So, and on Red Rock, your bigger fish, you know, if you can find those 7 and above class fish, that's going to win you a tournament all day long, if not put you in the top 3. So but that's how I drift. Like I said, this is a nice breeze we got going on here, but we're still not moving fast enough. We're going 0.3, so to me that's just too slow. That'll let the fish actually engulf the bait, and then you're looking at possibly hooking a gill, or even getting a stomach, you know, a hook in the stomach. So the faster baits, it'll let them chomp down on the bait, but then you'll get that hook set in the corner of the mouth. So and again, I use circle hooks just like everybody else. Yeah, so that's drifting 101. That's how we do it. Hope you can do it. Like I said, trolling motor, drift sock. You can either do your drift sock out the front and go with the wind. It works. Just you got to make sure there's not that much chop, because you don't want your rods flipping. Because if your rods are flipping up here, guess what your bait's doing down there? It's getting all tangled up, and the fish won't even touch it. So you want a nice, easy presentation of a nice steady drift. As far as rigging for your drifting, I use a barrel swivel on my main line for my sinker line. Drifting wise, I'll do 6 to 10 inches on my sinker, and my weights, I use pencil weights. I'll do a 2 to 3 foot leader, which is 60-pound big game mono is what I use for Red Rock here, because there's nothing in here bigger than, you know, maybe a 30-pound flathead or something like that, but that can handle it. If I go down to, say, Tennessee River or something like that, I'll pop that up to, I use 80-pound Andes line monster. There's no preference on it, it works for me. So and then, you know, I'll put a float on my leader line, and then my circle hook and fresh bait. Sometimes I'll use those little spinny rattles, but other than that, I just use a float and fresh bait, because catfish, yes, they will strike on sound. A lot of guys use them. If you're comfortable with using them, go right ahead, you know. But I for one, you know, I'll stick a little tiny glass bead rattle in there or something like that every now and then. But majority of the time, I'm using a float with fresh bait. I mean, that's key to me, fresh bait. The fresher the bait you have, guess what? You're going to catch fish. So, but that's drifting 101. That's how we do it. So, all in all, drifting, dragging, planer boards, everything, when it all comes together, you have a good time. You put fish in the boat. That's what it's all about. We just got the drift socks hanging up the back of the boat. It's all about putting fish in the boat. For all you river guys, this would help you guys out a lot. I know you guys, you know, you're stuck on your current, you're stuck on your, you know, you're bouncing baits. So, you know, as you see, the rivers haven't been the best this year. Using these techniques, you'll be able to get on any kind of lake and just go fishing. You know, half the time is just putting fish in the boat and having a good time. Well, guess what? If you're not allowed on your river and you're jonesing to put some fish in the boat, yeah, they might be channel cats, but you know what? Fish is a fish. So time to start learning, boys. That way then you can go to other lakes and start competing too. You know, if you want to get into some tournaments, you can not only fish the rivers, but you can fish lakes as well. So here you go.